Okay, greetings and welcome to another community update. This one is actually called the EDI Paradox. Now, over the last few days, many of us have been confused or been in arguments and debates about the government's report on the absence of institutional racism in the UK. Apparently it's a myth now. And a lot of us have been triggered, but we shouldn't have been. You see, this government has made no secret of its disdain for research or experts. And we saw that recently during the pandemic when it engaged in acts of what I would call lockdown hesitancy. And this reluctance to actually do the right thing based on data, scientific data, led to tens of thousands of people dying unnecessarily. But I suppose because this report's been called the Sewell report, we think he's an academic, therefore it must have been sanctioned by a university. But no, that's not true. This report has no backing of any university. It's a polemic. It's a piece of propaganda. And if we're going to be really honest, this isn't Sewell's report. This is the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's report. You see, you've got to understand the way politics works. For a topic such as this on race, there is no way the Commission could have published this without Boris Johnson having gone through every single line, every controversial topic before it got the green light to go into public domain. And he chose to keep those phrases inside the document. He chose to put it into the wild, this whole idea about a Caribbean experience. This is part of the culture war that the government's been engaged in over the last few months. Now, this is not Sewell's report. This is a Conservative Prime Minister Boris Johnson's report. So, there is some good news. The reality of the situation is that the way the media works, we'll be over this in around 7 to 10 days. They'll move on to another topic. The bad news, however, is that for those of us who are affected by institutional racism, we've still got to live with the reality of it. Only this time without funding for projects that can actually help eradicate it. And so I say that's where we come in. This is where we must take advantage and seize the day. You see, they're trying to reframe the debate around institutional racism. They call it structural racism, systemic racism, all these different terms. But the truth of the matter is it started off and was first coined by Kwame Ture from the Black Panthers. And I kind of like institutional racism. It kind of says what it is on the tin. Government institution does a report looking into the racism that it practices, clears itself using its institutional powers. Systemic structural racism, yeah, I mean there's a part in that, but we're talking about institutions keeping racism going on. So let's stick to the term institutional racism. And then the second thing we need to do is redefine what racism is. You see, over the last few years, it's become embroiled in debates about discrimination and colourism. You know, hearing naughty words because of the colour of our skin, when in truth, racism is about violence. It's about the violation of people's culture, their history, their physical integrity, and their lives. And we're seeing that right now in America with the George Floyd trial, where an African in America lost his lives because the justice system decided to be judge, jury, and executioner. So let's make sure we reframe and redefine racism using the language of violence and violation as it truly is. And I think I'm going to close with what I call the EDI Paradox. Now, one of the things we have to understand is that this report claims that there is no more institutional racism in the UK. Okay, that's its hypothesis. There's a big problem though. You see, up and down the UK, we have institutions, hundreds of them, organisations that all have EDI departments. EDI teams, EDI officers. EDI, if you don't know, stands for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. And it begs the question, if there is no institutional racism, if it is all a myth, if racism has left the British Isles, then why do we still have EDI units? Anyway, I'm going to close this here. And as usual, say enjoy the bank holiday. Be safe, there's still a virus around. And may the ancestors continue to guard and protect us. Ashe.